Hello and welcome to everyone to our Monday, November 20th, 2023 Legal Contracts and Board Policy Committee meeting. It is 5:52 and we can begin with section 1.01, dive right into the previous meeting summary, our meeting on October 16th. We discussed a lot of the technology policies. We had our presentation from Mr. Henshaw, and actually a lot of the rest of today's meeting is discussion we put on hold because I think there were only a couple of us there that day, but I'll let you go through the minutes. If anybody has any comments, objections, moving on. All right, moving right on then to our discussion topics, starting with section 2.1, policy 9700, advertising and commercial activities. So I will let Haley go ahead and talk about this policy for us. It's a new policy.
Hi, everyone. Is this on? So this policy was reviewed by Howard Lawson, Deborah Falk, Zach Hanshaw, and Mark Williamson. It's a new policy that provides guidelines to the appropriate use of advertising to students and parents in schools. We are advising to go with option 1, which states that the Board of Education shall not permit advertising in the school district. And it's a pretty simple policy that should be adopted. We don't have an APS policy currently, as Dr. Molnar stated. There's not much more that I have regarding that. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
This policy was on the potential agenda for us during our last committee meeting. The reason I wanted to hold off on discussion for it was so we could have the opportunity to discuss now that there are 3.5 board members here. The reason I wanted to discuss this is because, one, it is a new policy. It was a Neola recommendation, but it's something that we didn't have before. And then the other thing that I noticed on here, if you look on the third page, the general advertising guidelines, there are a lot of options here. We do have recommendations for these options, but I did want us to have the opportunity to peruse these options and discuss them before we moved forward. Yes.
So my question is, I went to an event a couple weeks ago, and it was for Summit County. Oh, I can't think about it, but it was for different services. They provide alcohol abuse, substance, ASCD, alcohol substance abuse. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Is it an ADM board?
ADM, ADM, thank you. So the ADM board, thank you so much.
Of course.
Because they do great things, right? And so one of the things I know that they offered was like suicide prevention. And based off this policy, even a nonprofit like that could not have their information readily available in the schools, as I'm understanding this. Is that correct, Kaylee? Because it says no, and usually they have literature, suicide prevention hotlines and other resources that are available for students. Those things typically could be found within the school or pamphlets. They can go to a counselor. So what is this? Am I understanding this? Because when I read it, that's what I was taking when it says that should not be used for any commercial advertising or otherwise promote the interests of any commercial, political, nonprofit, or non-school agency or organization, public or private.
Your understanding is correct, although there is an option here that says final discretion whether to advertise, and the content and value of materials will be with the board. That's not currently selected, but that's definitely something that we could consider as an option.
And is that also where we have option A, the schools and businesses can protect educational values, so consistent with the district's educational standards and goals? So something
that's
like
option
that.
2, but that's under, you see, because we're the one that we have selected is option 1. But option 2 is the one that has the board may permit advertising in school facilities on school property or in the following categories that benefit the school, or is that what you're talking about? Where you say A?
No.
Or are you talking about under 2?
No, the end of option 2 is on the back here, and then the general advertising guidelines would be, I think, still for option 1.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Am I not looking? This is where
It looks, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I do too.
because I'm,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this part here, like, 'cause we would need this part. We would need products, we would need this. So are you saying?
Yes, so this is option 2 here, and then this is option 2, and then option 2 ends here, and then this is back to regardless of option, I believe.
So that's, Dr. Mulliner correct, that the end of option 2 is on the page that you're referring to above the general advertising guidelines. What could be done is add some of those options into administrative guidelines, so there's a little bit more room for board discretion to allow certain commercial advertising or nonprofit, whatever the board sees to be beneficial.
yeah, because you have programs like Dream Academy, Fallen Fathers that benefit students within our schools directly. It's no cost to the students, but it's things that they need and our parents need. And so to like isolate those things, I do not think will be wise, because once we create a policy, to undo it, now you got to go through something. So we have to be mindful of the things that's already in our schools, because this would say that those things could no longer have, information available to kids, scholarships, opportunities, the NAACP, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the cotillion, like things that promote scholarship and things for kids. They wouldn't be able to come in and put a flyer, because that would be a nonprofit advertising. They wouldn't be able to have those things readily available.
So currently, if you want to post something, they do have to get permission via our business affairs office. So is something like that included in here?
Right.
Like, would that be C? Do you see what I'm saying? Would that be like letter C under the general advertising guidelines? So
The
even if-
case-by-case basis?
Yeah, so just, I guess, not holding it. Like, is there somewhere in here that would allow some flexibility as relates to things that are going to help with benefiting our families and our students?
And that's what Haley
In
was
the
saying, we could maybe add, we may need to add some things, because as it is, I don't think so, but Molnar, because number one, as it is, the selected, I didn't see those options.
Well, and that's why, so back to the third page, the general advertising guidelines, I think that's where we have some opportunity for discussion now, between, how flexible do we feel comfortable and appropriate. And so option C, as you just said, the board reserves the right to consider requests on a case-by-case basis. A is an option where it is aligned with the district's educational standards and goals. And then on the back, there's Q, which I think is the one that Haley mentioned originally, is discretion will be with the board. So there are options here to consider. So the recommendations are the ones that are X'd, but this is why I wanted to move it to today, so we have an opportunity to groupthink this. Yeah.
And also, when I think about what we already have in place, I know prior to me coming on this board, the district invested in scoreboards in a lot of our high school gyms. And so I know we have certain companies on those scoreboards. My understanding at the time is that generated some revenue for us. So I certainly wouldn't want to,
So you have a sponsorship. So like some of our college and career academies, like when you go into, is it Garfield? Is it Garfield? Their new gym, like whatever, one of their partners,
right.
big logo is up there, because I think they help with funding something in there.
Yeah, and I believe at Elliott Stadium, and when you said scoreboard, I think University
And
of
our
Akron
gyms as well.
is
University of
advertising
Akron,
there.
Stark State. So, I mean, if that's an opportunity for us to generate income, I don't want to
Cut it off.
prohibit that. And I don't think we've even really maximized it, because I know I've seen those same few companies on the scoreboard in the gym at Bookdale. So there's still space and room as we're coming off our finance committee. So
15 million.
So, yeah, I would like for the board to, reserve the right, to make sure that we are not,
So am I correct? So right now, the discretion is with business affairs.
Correct. So you send, so like for instance, when I was in the building, they'll come to you and say, can you send this out to your families? As long as they had all the copies and as long as it was approved through Deborah Folk's office, then we were able to send it out. But you would have to send that informational flyer or whatever it is to her first. She would inspect it to make sure that it meets, whatever our guidelines are, and then it's connected to whatever our mission goals are within the district, and then she would approve it, and then we could send it out.
So as a policy, should we leave it in administrative guidelines with business affairs? Or while we're reviewing this policy, should we look at perhaps leaving C, board reserves the right to consider on a case-by-case basis, or A, making sure it's aligned with standards and goals or something like that?
Because I even think about like some of our mental health agencies that are in our building. A lot of buildings keep their pamphlets, like Minority Behavioral Health Group, Families First, Red Oak, and those are just sitting out there in the office for parents to, so just making sure that there's, and then there's even an approval process for that as it relates to having access to the buildings.
So I'm also thinking about the fences around our stadiums. So I know there was a building level fundraiser for a particular group. And so they solicited the businesses in that community. And so those banners were all on the fences around the football stadium. So I'm saying that out loud, but should they have come to business affairs first for each one of those businesses?
I don't know, because when you go to a lot of football games and, you'll hear them make Chick-fil-A commercials over the loudspeaker, but it's because Chick-fil-A probably gave them some, so I don't know if anything like that could be addressed in the policy, because we definitely want to continue to receive financial supports from partners without discouraging them from wanting to provide that financial support.
And that would be the
Right.
appropriation of space, like on the back page, when you see direct advertisement or appropriation of space on B, because it talks about the signage, like when you talk about on the scoreboards, or Ms. Carter, when you talked about like on the
right here,
gym,
B,
yeah.
yeah.
These are things that you all just described.
But even still, I think it still should be approved by somebody before thank you for your donation, and whatever it is that they want to put up, it still should be approved by somebody.
And now that we are continuing to discuss this, I went to 2 shows. I went to Miller South, I saw The Giver, and then I saw Dracula at Firestone. And in their brochures, there are advertisements in those also.
Because they may have sold space, and that might be a fundraiser, because they have one of the strongest PTAs, that might be why.
No.
I mean, well, money, they say they have money. All true. They ain't asking for gowns and stuff, congratulations. So, APTA doing something, and I went to Garfield, so I don't have to be biased for Firestone, but, just to consider, I think the approval is still consistent, but the fact that those aren't marked off, because we already have a current policy. I mean, we
No,
don't have a
we don't.
process. We have a process, but not a policy. So within that policy, the current process needs to be added, which is the approval of business affairs.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, this discussion has highlighted the need for a policy and the outcome from the lack of one.
Because a lot of these things we are doing, and they weren't already checked. You
Mm-hmm,
see? Like some stuff that was checked off for this was fine, but then when we get to the appropriation, like kind of like the indirect advertisement, sponsorship,
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what another word we call it, is already happening. So we don't want to, just to be like, we're belaboring a point, but we don't want to eliminate practices that we already have that are good practices that are beneficial for the district, both financially and also beneficial for our student body and other stakeholders, the families, right? Because even the United Way, being housed in some of our schools, with the resource centers that they provide and the things that they provide, cards that they give away, information about utilities, help, and things like that. These are all things that we want to keep. So just finding a way to package it very well so that when something else changes, it's like, no, your organization can't put information in here, but this organization can. That we have a standard operating procedure that's supported by policy. So that's why the policy is good, because everyone has to adhere to it if they violate it.
I would like to see the building principals, though, have some say-so in this, at their individual buildings.
Yeah, and they do, because, like, if you come to me and ask me if I get, like, I could say, this is something that's not in alignment with our school improvement process or anything that's going to help with supporting us. So maybe you may want to check with maybe another building it might support, but you don't have to get it approved to post it. So that the discretionary, their discretion will be whether or not to get it approved or not to share. Because you have people coming to ask you to send out a bunch of stuff, and you have to, sort through it and decide what's going to be best for your families and your students. Mm-hmm. As the building leader. But maybe that might be part of the process that's written in the policy, is that when people come to the building, that the building principal would decide whether or not to take it to business affairs, if it's in alignment with their building goals along with the district goals. I don't know what you guys think about that.
That sounds fair.
So.
Because I don't want people
yeah.
going straight to business affairs.
I don't either.
I want to put my signs up over at Ennis and Jennings. Like it should, the principal should have some.
Right, because maybe business affairs can't appreciate Gino's Pizza,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know. So,
I agree.
So we will look into this more, if that's okay, and discuss and bring back to our next meeting.
Yep, that sounds great. And I just have one question. When you're imagining it going to business affairs, would then the business affairs decision be subject to the board's discretion, or do you think it should end with business affairs?
I think that it would be, business affairs would be the superintendent's and the board's designee.
Okay.
To make that decision.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Because we don't want people having to go through a cumbersome process either, and then it never gets.
Right. No, I understand. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding correctly so I can.
It almost seems
report
like if the
back.
principal has guidelines, that the principal can make the decision. Like if there's business, if I'm the instructional leader of the building, or the principal, if they're aware of the guidelines, if it's clear guidelines, like if it's clear, because whatever business affair is going to do, if it's just a rubric, I'll just use that word for it. And then the principal should be able to say, okay, and if it aligns, like the principal can approve it. What do you think would be an issue with that, Carter?
I just want to make sure that it's in alignment with the district goals too. Just making sure that there's alignment at each level.
No, that's my
I
point.
guess.
Like if it's going, whatever business, that's what I'm asking. So because that's still a lot. If say I'm a principal and
Right.
then, you doing your 50 million things, this comes in like, yeah, this is a good program. It has to go to business affairs. And then I'm doing like,
But I don't know, is the principal gonna have time to look to see, is this real LLC? Is this a real business?
Okay,
You
yeah,
know, are
I
they gonna be
got
able to
you.
do the research part?
the research, got you, because they
Right.
wouldn't have the time if they putting out fires and doing other stuff. So, okay, which takes me back to why business affairs. I didn't even think that part about verifying if it's a real LLC.
Right.
Because I'm
A
thinking,
real business.
I'm
Like,
thinking
anybody
things
can come in
like
and say, "I have this."
scholarship. I'm
Yeah.
thinking like, I'm thinking of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So moving on to policy 8210 on the school calendar. This is discussion of the school calendar. Another Neola update. Go ahead.
So the Neola policy that you have in front of you reflects the current law, and while APS has been in compliance with the current law, we want to update the policy to reflect that. And the most major difference is that the previous policy reflected the number of days when school will be in session for instructional purposes, and current Ohio law now prescribes that the board shall be, or that the board shall determine the total number of hours of instruction as opposed to days. So the updated policy will also reflect that the superintendent is authorized to develop and implement a plan for virtual education in certain circumstances concerning public health and various other hazards like weather, so a little bit of like pandemic era language that will be helpful in making sure that the school can meet their number of hours.
So I guess I'm trying to be clear on what this is. Is this stating that each district determines now how many hours, as long as we fit into the number of days that are told to us by the state? Is that what this is? As long as it meets the days.
So if you look at the 5th paragraph, it says for at least the minimum number of hours required by Ohio law. So I don't have that number in front of me, unfortunately, but it's whatever the statutory number is, and I can easily look that up and report back. But within the revised code sections that are listed at the bottom of the Neola policy, there is a specific number, is my understanding.
Okay, it's a number of hours, so it's not
Minimum.
days. So they switch it from days to hours.
And
Right.
it was like 920 or something like that. And
So it's basically saying in the event that as I was reading this, was just saying that the superintendent would have the autonomy to make the decision that necessarily the board would not have to convene.
As far as are you talking about the first portion or the second portion, the highlighted portion there?
The highlighted, as far as the plan for.
Yeah, that's correct. That's in addition to what is not currently in the board policy. But the other change is just that language change from hours to days.
right. And then this gets rid of the blizzard bags and then allows the superintendent to provide the makeup education as needed and as appropriate for our district. So, I don't know if there's more discussion on this one. I personally am okay with this one moving forward. That is my recommendation. But if there's more discussion,
I think it's fine. I mean, now that we know how to do online learning.
We have
Maybe- I mean,
hybrid.
maybe 5-10 years ago, we'd be freaking out, but, yeah, I think that's great. It just says that he could continue continue school, just with the
Right.
virtual
Right.
option, basically, so I think that's good.
Agreed, yeah, I'm fine with it.
Great, thank you. And then the second to last one on the list here, this actually was brought up because it is a Neola update. So the public participation at board meetings policy had a Neola update. However, as a district, our public participation at board meetings policy already did not match Neola. And so it is anticipated that our update, if we were to update, also would not match Neola. I also know that in the past couple of months, there have been a lot of public comments about our policy. So while this policy was going to come up anyway, because of the Neola update, I wanted to have the opportunity for us to have a discussion. And Haley so wonderfully also provided this to us, which I think is a really, really great sample of not just our policy, but with our peers. So Haley, please, thank you, and take it away.
Thanks. So a lot of the Neola policy is incorporated into what we have right now. There are a couple of changes that are being recommended. The first one you'll see in the comment there is to include both regular and special meetings within the public participation policy. And then I would like to draw your attention first to B, which states that anyone having legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the designated public participation. APS is currently, says the same thing, of course, subject to board approval and after following all of the procedures that are required, which I don't think that the procedures are at issue, but what is something that we want to discuss is the eligible participants portion of this. So currently APS's policy is that any person or group may address the board subject to approval upon registration. You'll see in this chart that I provided that school districts kind of vary quite a bit with regard to this, especially Dayton's, which states that only residents of the Dayton Public School District may participate in public participation. And I just wanted to open up the conversation to see what your thoughts are about that.
And we have discussed this briefly as a committee already, and that's why we have the comparison of the other districts here also now, because I think we had very strong feelings on this, and this may be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like what Toledo has on theirs, where it says any person or group may address the board pursuant approval, except district employees are generally not permitted to speak during public comment pursuant to his or her official job duties regarding matters within, because there should be like they should really be following the process. Like if you need furniture, then there's a process. You talk to your building principal reaches out to their supervisor to assist with, addressing whatever those needs are at the particular building. Like it shouldn't be coming here.
I think they should come here because,
So, but how do you address,
because the reason why they come here, because that's all good, theoretically. That would be great if teachers made these and went to their building principals and then they saw result, but they're not. And I have receipts upon receipts where that does not happen, where they're referred to even when they come here. In a public meeting and make these requests known, and still nothing happens after we say, oh, we're referring that to so-and-so to deal with it. And then students are in environments not conducive for learning, 90-something degree weather when they're taking iReady diagnostic assessments, stools that they can't fit. So they come here as a last resort, because many of the teachers who I followed up with, this was them coming here, they followed all those protocols, and nothing happened. And then you have teachers, not only did they follow it the first year, now they're in a year or two entering into a new school year in August, and it's still the same concern. So I think that it's their right, it's their First Amendment right, I think, and we should not try to, just because they're employees, I don't think that we should try to infringe on that. I think they should be able to come and speak about it, because why not? Even because if they follow the protocol and they don't have a voice, the public needs to know.
The protocol was followed.
Yeah, because like the teachers that North High School, she followed the protocol, went through the building principal. Firestone Park, same thing. Nothing happened, and now we're talking about a year later. So I don't know how many teachers that may have happened to when you hear things like they're not going to do anything. They become hopeless. I don't know that they all followed the protocol. I do know those two did, and nothing happened. So much so that even when they came down and spoke on the mic on a recorded meeting, and I went back and visited the schools. Nothing happened. So sometimes you have to say things publicly to where it becomes a part of the public record. I believe in this. So, I mean, I'm only one board member, though, but yes, because when that does not happen, when the system fails them, then if they don't have, we're their board, too. So that's why I believe that. Because a lot of times people think the board is aware, and we're not. Like, we have no idea that they're not being properly served, and we're looking in business affairs and all these things are being purchased, and then you need something in your classroom that's, like he said, millions of dollars is just a drop in the bucket of our budget. Well, I would think chairs are really a IFA, less than a penny of a drop in the bucket if we're talking about things, or air conditioning, you know. So I don't agree with that policy. That they can't that district employees can't speak at board meetings.
Well, it still says that they can speak as a citizen, private citizen on
But
matters of public concern subject to the same rules governing all other speakers.
Yeah, but they can't speak now as an employee, like as I was understanding it, because I can be wrong, that they can't speak as, in my classroom, my kids cannot fit in their chairs. I'm just using that. That they would have to then speak, as a citizen and use all this convoluted language because they could be in violation of a policy that possibly could cause some reprimand if they say that's just what it is. Like, if it's the truth.
Right. I'd just like to add, so I was a member of the board in 2020, and the first policy that we changed or addressed was this one. And at the time, it was the will of that board that we be open and transparent to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. Some of us came to this board with experiences of being not able to address this board on issues and topics, and we did not want that to be the case moving forward. So it was our attempt to be more open and transparent and to be able to hear the concerns, because this is the last resort for some. But it's also our opportunity to educate and remind folks of the chain of command, because you are absolutely correct.
And it happens a lot. People want to go straight to the superintendent, like, oh, you need to go talk, go talk to Mary first.
Right.
Or go talk to Larry first, or go talk to Michelle first. Like, you don't just jump to the...
You don't, but we have to remind them that repeatedly, and at these meetings is also an opportunity as well.
Right.
And so I would say that I want to hear it all, but we also at the same time have to remind folks about the chain of command. But like you said, sometimes publicly saying it somehow gets the ball rolling a little bit quicker sometimes, and I think we need that. I think it's important, but also I hope folks start coming to us with some good stuff too, because that's also an opportunity to share some good things, but that's something we have to ask for as well. So I just think it's important to kind of keep us honest and grounded, but then there's also the opportunity when we see folks who have signed up for something to speak. There can be an intervention prior to them getting to that point that solves the issue.
Right.
But to restrict them from signing up, I mean, I personally know what it feels like to be told, no, Ms. Autry, what you coming to talk about? And I don't want, any constituents to feel that way, whether they're employees or the general public. And then also we have some of our partners who might not be Akron citizens. So I know that was one of the things, I don't think we should restrict that. It's going to be hard to, public education is public.
And plus, when we talk about collaboration and corporate partnerships, you got to think of, COOs and CEOs of companies that may not live in Akron, but their corporation does business in Akron and contributes to the Akron public school system. So I just think let the people speak. Let the people speak. If they have something to say, what I do think if we're looking at addressing a policy, we might address the board's posture on when people speak, like how we converse with them, because a lot of times people come and they're expecting something. That's why they're coming. And currently we can't say anything. We just sit there. And some people see that like, well, what is going on? They think it means we're compliant with stuff and we may not agree, but we're governed by the board policy. that we don't respond, we can't respond or basically say anything until we may go away in an executive session or, have a discussion. But based off the policy, we can't even engage so that may be something to reconsider. But no, I just think this is Carla and I know I'm one board member.
But you do sometimes engage just to let them know that you hear them.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're not trying to solve whatever their issue is right now, because it may take you as a collective body to address whatever that issue is.
And again, it's our opportunity to educate folks who's in charge of that. Because many times after they've addressed us, I've seen the appropriate person follow that person out into the hallway, get the information. So maybe that's just something we can speak to out loud so people at home know. But we have to keep, and as we become more efficient as a district as well, we'll probably get less of those things
Yeah, I
because we're going to start pushing people to follow this chain of command. Like, I get calls all the time, and people want to be heard, so I listen, and then I turn around and educate them. Well, this is who is in charge of this, so this is who you should reach out to. But I'm not going to say, I can't talk to you, I can't listen, because
Right.
that's not my role as a board member. I'm going to educate folks on who they need to talk to. So I think we should, as a board, at our meetings, educate people, chain of command, and hopefully one day we'll get something too on the back of our cards. I've been asking for this forever. That explains the chain of command. So when I hand out my card, they can see, okay, it's teacher, assistant principal, principal, and then before it even gets to 10 North Main.
This is crazy to me because I don't know what people you all talk to, but I know educated people that go through this system and get the runaround. They go through teacher. They try to contact teacher. Then they try to contact teacher and maybe not get a direct response. They go to principal, or they, say if it's some type of other issue where they're going to, it's not a teacher issue, they go to the principal. I've been calling this principal, the principal is blowing me off, blah, blah, this, and that, like in real time, that people go through these processes. Not that it can't be just reiterated, reminded, but even when they call downtown someone to tell them, oh, this is the department that you need to, contact or talk to, and then people are waiting days to hear back, or they feel that they're in limbo about their, like.
I would agree with that.
We need to be
and I had that
realistic
very
about-
thing today.
Yeah, realistic about what we telling people.
And I tell people, if it's a phone call, it didn't happen. Like in nursing, they tell us if you don't document, it didn't happen. So I always encourage the emails and putting the appropriate person on the emails. And
Well, I
so,
think that,
but calls sometimes, yeah, that absolutely is the case.
I think what you're talking about is something that Dr. Robinson is trying to work on as it relates to our blueprint for excellence, and then also addressing client services, and that's internal and external. But then I do like the idea of making, because we used to put, like in our newsletters, we'd always put, like, if you have a complaint, we gave them the number to call. And I think that, like you said, like on the back of the card, if you have a concern, this is the number that you contact, if it's elementary, middle school, high school, so that they can have a number to call if they have a complaint, if they need to go beyond the building principal. But we have to advertise, like you said, and educate them on who to contact, so they're not just first jumping to the superintendent.
I agree with that. Yes, I agree with that. And this is why I said for the student, when we talk about student voice, that students need to have a grievance policy as well, because before it gets like, if they go to a principal, or if they're having an issue that, not that they're suspended, not that they're expelled already, but they've been complaining about X problem. And it's like they feel voiceless. And then people assume that this board knows what's happening. If a child is referred for expulsion, or if there's been an issue that's been an ongoing issue at a school, they assume that we are aware because we're the Board of Education, and we're not. And so, to your point, I love the idea about the numbers of on the back of our cards or wherever. This, if you have a complaint, elementary, middle, whatever, this is the number that you start off at. But even for students with the email, like our student leaders, Dreamer did a fantastic job with that when we did our superintendent.
Google document.
What was your meeting called, superintendent? Anyway,
Advisory?
yes, when we had it upstairs, and she did an actual run through for the the student leaders, right, to show how they can email board members like directly. But for instance, Columbus, they had a panel of their student leaders, which was a really great panel. But if I talk to you and you're my leader, Ms. Carter, but then these 22 didn't get you, then what would be a process, like just the email process, like this issue's been going on, and we can vet it, whether we send it off to wherever, but at least we're aware and we can follow up, like, hey, how was that issue resolved, so that our stakeholders, students, and families know that we are truly advocating for them and making sure follow through happens. Because sometimes it's just, no, you're wrong, and this is... But at least they know it is a real process, because when you're not, that someone is advocating for you to see you win, because that's part of that blueprint for excellence too, that customer service and giving them what they need. So I think that's good with the numbers for sure, because I didn't even know something like that existed.
Okay, so I next want to draw your attention also to the time listed. So APS allows 20 minutes with the option to extend by simple majority of the board with individual time of 3 minutes each. That is the most typical setup across all of these school districts. I just wanted to bring up the opportunity to see if anyone wants to discuss any potential changes to that, or if we think that's sufficient.
That's fine. It seems like it's longer than that when we're getting beat up. It's like, oh my gosh, it's been 5 hours. They cussing us out.
We're also recommending that individuals may not register others to speak during public participation. Are there any objections to that?
Like they have to register themselves.
They have to register themselves, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why not? If they're not here, they're not going to be able to speak anyway. But if I'm running late, I may want my niece or my daughter to put my name on there, because I'm speaking. Because I could be coming from work, and but what's the problem with someone else signing? Because if they're not here, they're not going to be able to speak anyway. So what would be I'm just asking to the body, like,
Right. I don't
have a problem with
I don't have
someone
an objection
signing
to
someone
that,
else
because as
up.
you stated, if they don't show up,
If they don't show up,
when
they're not
called,
speaking
then
anyway.
They don't speak. But
Because I might say, Mona, sign me up. I'm running behind. I was in the meeting, but I'm speaking.
Yeah, I think the thought behind that might have been, if we regularly went over the 20 minutes, then the people who got here might not be the people who speak first, because somebody else could have signed up a bunch of people in advance. But if we have the sign-ups before anyways, I think that can happen anyways. So I don't think that matters. And we very rarely go up to that whole 20 minutes, even though it does not feel like that.
Okay, plus you call on them. And so if they don't come up, it's to the next person.
Yeah.
So it's not, you see, it
Yeah.
wouldn't,
Yeah.
I don't think it inhibits
I agree.
anything.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments about that? And then the rest of the policy is in alignment with APS's policy, except for the last portion, the bolded at the last full paragraph on the second to last page and onto the last page, that APS currently does not address remote public participation in their board policy. Is this option below something that we would like to consider further, or?
Well, we have had, I've been at, when I was just a newly elected board member, we had a person address the board remotely with the matter regarding Miller South. And she was like on this screen. I don't know if she was out of state. I'm not sure why she was remote, but she was. And she had made a comment. And I don't know, I think she either signed up early enough and said she was going to have to be virtual. I don't know, Audrey, if you recall or can add some additional insight. But we have had virtual participation of a person, I can only say of one, that came virtually to address the board. So I'm not sure.
That's when we were remote?
No, we were here, because I was here in the flesh.
Oh, okay. What page is that on?
It's the second to last page and onto the last page. It's the last couple paragraphs in bold.
Because I only have one.
It's this one here. So between these two, the top one or the bottom one, which continues a little bit onto the back, personally, I like the top one better than the bottom one, where we may permit versus we do permit, just because I work with technology a lot, and it is not as reliable. And to have us set that standard to always have to be able to allow people to be remote also would prohibit us from doing things that some people have said they wanted to do, which is occasionally, have a meeting somewhere else. That would be virtually impossible to do that if we are holding ourselves always to that technology standard versus may permit. That's my 2 cents.
I think may permit is good, but it's not something, because it's happened before. So.
Well,
it may
definitely
not be a
during
policy.
COVID, and we even accepted like pre-recorded videos. I remember during COVID a few times.
I came after
I like the
COVID,
verbiage
right?
May.
Well, in 21, wait a minute.
Yeah, I came after COVID.
Right.
So it just
So
wasn't-
the May.
probably not a written policy, but maybe to put, I like May, because for whatever reason that woman was able to. So if it wasn't a policy, it's happened.
My question, and I don't know if it's time for this question, is you mentioned possibly having us discuss what we do or do not discuss or address. Is that something that we are actually considering putting on here? That would be a separate discussion for a separate?
Yeah, that may be a separate discussion,
Okay.
because I was just to the point, I think Ms. Carter made the point, like, well, you do say, we
Yeah.
address it, but I'm saying, for instance, when something is like, oh, no, that's not true, we did X, Y, and Z. Like, if someone makes a statement, we're not able to say.
Correct it.
Correct, like, and it's an open meeting, so say if a statement is made, I think the truth should be able to be addressed. Like, no, we do have a policy that addresses that, or where it's not an argumentative thing, where just facts. If a statement is made, then their time is up, then we make a statement based off of the facts.
Is that included, and I don't know because I haven't read it yet, but there is here powers of the providing officer. That's like the third to last page. Would that be possibly something that's in that section? Maybe not.
I think it could get kind of tricky.
Yeah.
Because people
Yeah.
are going to expect, they're like, okay, well, they answered her Monday before last. I'm going to go and see if they're going to give me a response.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think you got to be careful of that. And like Audrey said, like people usually get up, if it addresses one of those departments, they usually get up and follow up with them anyway, as relates to. And then what if you like get into a back and forth with the person?
Well, yeah, that's why I was like kind of, it almost seems like, because that would be messy, because I've seen board meetings like that online, and I would not want to be in that, because, but it would have to be a decorum, like a standard like once they make their statement, right? And most times people leave from the podium, because if people are going to yell out, like we've had, they can be escorted out typically. But to just address if,
I think like blatant things that are blatantly inaccurate. We
Yeah,
do have a
that's
duty
kinda what
again
I'm
to
saying.
educate,
Yeah.
but I think that's the chair's discretion, or if you guys pass a note and say, hey, this is, or the superintendent might say, well, but it's our opportunity to educate again. But it is tricky because we shouldn't be having a conversation other than to address a blatant inaccuracy. Just my thought.
Because we have what we can stop our current policy, if they're being blatant, disrespectful, calling out, all that could be shut down. But I'm saying for the sake of information, Like what you're saying, like say if a whole crowd, depending on what the issue is, and they have a whole audience, and then misinformation is shared. I think when we sit silently, it allows for that misinformation to continue to live and grow when we could just address it. Because they're off the mic. I don't think it should be combative where they're on the mic and we're like, right? But once they sit down, once they are gone and it's like any comments, the president used to say, and then the president hopefully would have the information to, or if not, then whatever board member should interject and just say, oh, just so that you know, you can meet with Ms. Lash later over student services, but we do have these things available for our students that have specific needs. And she could talk to you a little bit about Project Rise or what we offer.
Right.
And just then it's done. They don't have a microphone. And for them to come undone in that point will result in them being, it's in violation of the policy. Just because I agree. I don't have the right answer. I'm just processing.
I could see, like what you're just saying right now sounds like you're saying, I hear what you're saying, and this is the person that can help you with the concern that you brought for us. But you're not getting into I know you're not telling the truth because I know we have a program that addresses, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to get into a back and forth with them and then, but I think it's just important that they know that they were heard and that you're going to identify somebody to follow up. Or the superintendent would identify, you could pass it to him, and then he could identify who to follow.
Because we do that now. Like you said, we're going to have the superintendent look into that, whatever. But which is good if the follow through. Yeah, we could just leave it at that because that's good. As long as the person follows through. Because then when they don't, then a board member like me says it on a mic when I go and visit or talk to that person. Because then I'm saying it publicly. Because publicly we said we're going to follow through. And then if they're calling me a month later or 3 months later and it hasn't been done, then you see what I mean? It defeats that whole, because it seems like we're just passing them like, the lemon dance, like they say.
Or sometimes people feel like things haven't been followed through when they just don't get what they want, right? So it's just making sure that, like when you said you'll check in to make sure that, it was followed through, and it was followed through, but they still didn't get what they want, but it was followed through. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh.
They didn't get the resolution
Like no resolution
necessarily
happened,
that
so
they
it's just like, no, you
wanted.
can't have
The
that.
resolution
Yeah.
is no.
The
person.
Yeah, the resolution
That's
is
the
no.
resolution.
Yeah.
It's like it's impossible to do whatever they're asking. Like some people continue to go to different people when they just can't get what they want. They're just trying to find a different answer.
No, yeah, that's a different situation. I understand that. Everything that I'm talking about now shouldn't be been a no, because we're not when we talk about equity and environments for students. If students are in a 90-degree, and I'm sticking to that, because we all have these outlier situations to whereas it's you want a bubblegum machine. I'm just saying, it's just you want whatever. No, I'm talking about real things that impact learning within classrooms. Chairs that kids can sit in and not be hunched over in a science lab. A classroom that's not 93 degrees registered where students supposed to, because we know what it says. We're educators. So in those are the instances I'm talking about, because I can filter through because I'm an educator. So the stuff that I'm going to bite into is stuff like what I'm saying, because the stuff, if they're going from person to person, you can kind of see like, oh, I'm going to send you to chief of staff with that. I'm going to send you to Ms. Carter, let her deal with that.
Any all problems.
But you get what I mean? I'm talking about real
Right.
stuff that should be a yes, that could be resolved, that deals with student learning and outcomes, and that's the stuff that I'm talking about when we address it, but not to belabor it, but
I just look at it all as an opportunity to keep educating our folks on whatever the topic is, who the person is. So I know we refer to the superintendent, but they might not know that, Zach is the IT person, though. So just getting names out there. So, I didn't know that was the person. So we take advantage of those opportunities.
yeah, I agree with that. I think we're all
I do have a couple of more points on this one, just because I want to make sure that this committee has the opportunity to look at the chart fully. And there are a couple of interesting things that other boards do across the state. One of them is Cincinnati has in their policy that the board encourages students to speak and be heard during board meetings, and therefore the presiding officer is encouraged to move public participation to an early part of the agenda to make sure students can participate, and also give students priority to speak when they wish to at public hearings. I don't know if there's anyone that wants to discuss that at all, but something I just wanted to bring to this committee's attention.
We already do that. We have student board members, and if it's like a regular student that's in the audience, we don't necessarily just move them to the front of the list, but usually students that come down early with the group, that probably put them on front of the list.
Great.
But yeah, I think we're very open to student voice and participation in board meetings, because they even sit where you are during their representatives and can speak before, I guess, part of participation.
Okay.
And our public participation period is at the beginning of the meeting already, so.
Okay, great.
We've had students speak.
And I think back to, not to belabor, but the conversation about the teachers and staff and other potential employee grievances, I think in a lot of the larger meetings we've had, the teachers very wisely have encouraged their students to speak. The teachers have not had to say much because the students said it for them, and it's more moving, it's more powerful
Very
when we hear it from the students. Yeah, especially the really little ones, because they're so cute. How do you say no?
Thank you. And then also, there is a clause in the Dayton, oh, sorry.
No, a couple of things though. So I did speak with Eric today regarding the website. So there are some changes that. I did speak with Eric today about the website. So you're going to see some changes going on the website. So, and our website will be doing a lot of changing between now and probably the end of the school year. So you might say, well, God, I looked at it yesterday, it looked one way. You will see that until we finally get it to where it needs to be. But when they click on board, they will be able to, so Ms. Angela, I want to make sure that we facilitate that with Eric. They will be able to click and respond. It's not going to the board. Their question or concern, we're going to have to work that to where it's routed to where it needs to go, because that can happen. So the board is not getting their questions. So, and that'll specify that on there, that their inquiry or whatever they're wanting to know will be routed to. So right now we have it for internal, but we don't have it for the public, so that they can send things. It's always better if we can get the information ahead of time, because usually if it comes to me, which is usually last, then once I do get it, then I'm able to send it and route the concern to the person it needs to go to. But that's if I get it before the board meeting. And usually with staff, some of their concerns are things that need to be directed internally, not externally. And so what I'm saying to them when they're asking to speak, what is it about? Because if it's about something that could be solved in 2 seconds, then I'm not going to forward that to the board, because it's already been addressed. And at that point in time, it's just, well, I want to speak. Well, if it's something you need to speak about, you can. But if it's something that we can take care of internally that we never knew about, then that gives us an opportunity to address that concern, and then Because it really shouldn't be where we're standing up here airing out dirty laundry in a board meeting, which is very inappropriate. It's something that we can take care of. Let's work with the employee to get it resolved and taken care of, rather than it coming to a board meeting, which is something that we maybe haven't been doing a lot of before. But I've caught like 2 since I've been here, and we've routed it to where it needs to go, and it was solved automatically.
That'd be great.
So, we just need to, that's why the management, I love our board, but I much prefer if I get it ahead of time, because then I can really, we have such a wonderful, gracious board, and they are. So if I can get it ahead of time, then I want to route it to where it needs to go so we can solve, whether it's an internal or external concern. Certainly want our, public and employees to be able to express, but if it's something we can work on before, let's just go ahead and do that rather than bringing it to a board meeting, unless it's something that, we've worked on, and they're, of course, as Ms. Angela said, they're not happy with the resolution, and that will happen. And there are times when that, and with kids, we're going to be working on that, because I think the student board, like their little president, not minimizing it, but their representative will sit here with the board. So if and they'll have an opportunity, we've added it, or it will be added for the students to be able to, for student voice, they'll be able to express at the very beginning of the board meeting any concerns that they have. But I'll be working with them as well. So a lot of their concerns probably would not come to the board meeting, because but there will be times when they'll have, and they may be able to comment on things. They can't vote, but they can comment on things that directly impact them as a student, as a scholar. So they still will have voice, but I'll be working with them on a continuous basis in terms of their concerns that they have. I'm really, even with like our blueprint, I was very pleased with the feedback that I saw from the kids, and they were very blunt, direct. I like that, but it was very open dialogue where I could really see what their concerns were, and they really gave us a lot of great information that we could use, and some things can't necessarily be addressed through the blueprint, but we still can address it on another level. So the kids do get an opportunity to have that voice piece in there.
And so that website link, maybe that's what we can put on our cars to feed people. Go here first in that chain of command.
Yeah.
Put the complaint protocol, like if you have your concern protocol there too.
Because it'll be a click drive. It's not going to be anything complicated. And they don't have to use that if they don't want to, but we'll usher them there. They can click whatever department, and that's how it's going to get routed to wherever it needs to go. And we'll be keeping track. Dr. Chapman does that, and Ms. Angela will have, because I've already asked her to give her access to it so she can be monitoring that as well. Any concerns, because we're not trying to keep anything from the board, but if it's things that internally that the board doesn't need to get involved in or deal with, we can address that. And if it's something that I think is something that the board needs to be aware of, I'll make you aware of it. But for the most part, if they use that process, and then some of them still may call and say, hey, I want to, I'd like to speak at the board meeting. Once we find out what it is, we're going to contact them anyway. Now, some may say, nope, I still want to talk. That's not a problem. But we just want to try in our blueprint, there's a cornerstone for operational excellence. And within that cornerstone is client services. There will be a strategy on that. So that's just being able to internally and externally be able to address the concerns and needs of our clients. I like not to say customer service because they are more than a customer, internally and external. And client has a different connotation to it because our parents, our community are very valuable, and our employees, and so their concerns, I look at those things as opportunities because that only helps us to get better at whatever it is that we need to work on. So.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson, can I ask you a question? You spoke about how it would be helpful to have more time prior to the public hearing to know what topics were going to be discussed. Are you thinking it would be better to have like maybe the day before or at a certain time prior to the board meeting?
You mean when people want to submit to requests to
Yes.
speak? Yeah, I mean, it's whatever the board would want. I would prefer if that was done a week in advance, because there are times if something comes at the last minute, we may have been able to address it. And we're not trying to stop people from speaking. Certainly, we encourage voice of our community and our employees. But if it's something that we could have gotten earlier, then. But I mean, if they submit it the same day, I might miss it because it may not get to me in enough time. But outside of that, but I know that that's a change, and as we're evolving and changing, some people may say, well, I shouldn't, I should have the right to just walk in. I mean, it's whatever the board wants, but if you're asking me, I would recommend for that to be done at least a week in advance. But sometimes things come up at the last minute and people say, oh, I think I want to talk about that, So we don't want to say no because we don't want to give the image that we don't want you talking. But we're just trying to, work with our clients as best we can, as quickly and expeditiously as we can, because if they have concerns, we want to be trying to address it. But either way, it just depends on which way the direction the board would want to go.
Thank you.
Oh, no, she just asked, should we have people sign up a day before?
No, that negates the policy. Did you just speak to that?
Yeah, earlier. And so, Dr. Robinson, I was sharing with the committee that in 2020, that was the first policy that we changed. It's the public address policy, and we created the same-day sign-ups. And some of the reasoning for that is something comes up for a family or someone who wants to address us, and maybe they just missed a board meeting the day before. And then 2 weeks later, and maybe they need a cooling down period. But we just didn't want to be a board that was prohibitive. We just wanted to be open to hear it all. I anticipate moving forward, we're going to have less and less issues because I just see us getting more and more efficient. So, so I'm not concerned because I know that you're capable. That's why we hired you. But, I don't want to go backwards and be restrictive. When possible, absolutely. The sooner the better. But for those folks who issue happen, and it's the board meeting tonight, yeah. And they still might get caught before the meeting, Again, I anticipate the district getting better and better about addressing things. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Is there anything else on this public participation policy? If not, we can move on to the next policy, which is the Board of Revision Complaints and Countercomplaints.
Yes, and this policy, you can speak to it, but this was the only thing that we did not have as discussion on the last meeting. This is the only addition to this agenda, and this was important because it is related to the change in the taxes here in Summit County and the complaints and countercomplaints. So go ahead.
So this is a new policy. There isn't a current policy at APS for complaints and countercomplaints, and should be adopted by the board in some form to show that we are our policy reflects state law. APS is already compliant with this. It is a policy that prescribes the method by which the board may challenge real estate tax valuations. through the Board of Revision in certain circumstances. Those circumstances are enumerated in the paragraph under original complaint and under counter complaints for responses to complaints that seek reduction in market value. This was reviewed by Dr. Thompson and Attorney David Seed with some small changes to the policy, but otherwise they felt it was good to move forward.
And especially after our Finance Committee meeting today and what we have upcoming, this was important to get started. I think, yes, this looks fine to me
Okay.
also, but I don't know if anyone else has additional.
I think that's our last one.
That's it?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thanks. Do I say we adjourn at 7:02?
Thank you.